It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. It is the Jill on Money show. It is the first weekend of December, and we are delighted that you are joining us today. Thanks for tuning in. We're broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Now, you know what's funny, Mark? I was just thinking after I just complained to you like nonstop for 15 minutes because I woke up crabby today. Somebody actually had said to me that I sound so upbeat on our show. Maybe you should run the pre-show rants that I do to prove to everyone that I am very human in that respect. I was in a bad mood. I'll admit it. I was in a bad mood. I did a television hit. I didn't love my performance. It bummed me out. And, you know, Mark reminded me that even 300 hitters make it into the Hall of Fame. So maybe I'll make it into the Broadcast Hall of Fame. That'll be in about 100 years whenever I retire. That said, this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. We are delighted that you are joining us. We want to remind you that in order to make the show more fun, we want to hear from you. So that means all you have to do, send an email, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com, and let us know if you'd be willing to come on the air with us. Let us know, because that will be very, very helpful. Love hearing other voices. Okay? All right. Now, let's get to a question right away, because that's fun. Jessica writes, "Hi, Jill and Mark. I found your podcast a couple of months ago and enjoy listening and learning from the no-nonsense advice that you give." Just a little side note here, gang. We have a separate broadcast, a podcast. We drop it daily. And if you would like to subscribe to it, because maybe just meeting up with you every weekend isn't enough, you want us every day, 7 days a week, you go to the Jill on Money website, and there the podcast, you'll see the front door. You can figure out how to subscribe. It's really pretty easy, but they're little bite-sized nuggets, so 10, 12 minutes an episode. So check it out. That's the podcast. Okay, let me get back to Jessica, whose question is about the current types of retirement funds, wants to know if she should make some changes. So Jessica goes on to write, "I am 37, single, no dependents. I make about $125,000 a year as an engineer." That's great. Jessica says, "I feel pretty good about my savings rate for retirement, but I'm wondering, should I make changes to the amounts that I save to different types of accounts, pre-tax, post-tax, brokerage?" Okay, before this year, the majority of savings was through her work-based 401k. She used pre-tax 401k, so the traditional. And then she put extra savings into a brokerage account. The only debt that Jessica holds is a mortgage on her condo. She's got a 15-year fixed rate at 2.75%. She owes about $226,000. Estimated value is $370,000. Here's a savings breakdown. Brokerage account, $110,000. Roth IRA, $30,000. Rollover IRA, $236,000. Traditional 401k, $226,000. Emergency fund, 6 months, about $25,000. And a health savings account, $17,000. That's great. This is all very good. Okay. She goes on to say that she's got a pretty high risk tolerance. Most of her money is in stocks, couple of broad index funds. She says she's a buy and hold kind of investor. So 90% in stock or stock index funds, and the remaining 10% in bond, ETFs, and CDs. All right, here's what she's doing. She's maxing out her 401k, 15% of income, 6% company match. And previously, she had been doing 100% pre-tax. She recently switched it to 10% pre-tax plus 6% company match, and then 5% post-tax. Well, before I had occasionally contributed to my Roth, I hadn't done it regularly. This year, I am maxing out the contribution and I plan to do so going forward. So, just so everyone remembers, there's an income range for being able to put money into a Roth. So, if you are single, that range for next year is $125,000 to $140,000, which is why even though she makes 125 grand a year because she's doing some pre-tax into a traditional 401k, she gives herself the room to get to the Roth limits as well. Next, she's maxing out her contribution. So she's going to keep doing the Roth IRAs and maxing out. She's maxing out her HSA. She's got an employee stock plan. She says, I recently learned I probably should have been putting more money into a post-tax retirement account. That's the heart of my question. Besides contributing the max to my Roth IRA going forward, what should I do to have a good mix of pre and post-tax accounts when I retire? And I would like to retire early. 55 sounds like a nice number. And I'm wondering if that would change the advice. I realize that being able to retire early will depend on a number of factors, but it's nice to have a goal. All right. Thanks for what you do, Jessica. I think the mix is fine. I think you're totally, totally fine. You've got an interesting path ahead of you because I don't know whether you're going to keep making around this much money or whether you see your income rising. I feel like that engineers make a lot of money over time. So there are two different aspects of this. One is, what you should do going forward. So as long as possible, I think Roth is great. I'm wondering, do you not have through work a Roth 401k? Because obviously that would be the easiest way to do it. And it's not limited by your income. But let's say that you don't have that. I think you're doing just a fine job doing what you're doing. I like the amount of money that's in the brokerage account that does give you flexibility, especially if you think about retiring that early. So all in all, I think you've got a good, well-rounded balance here between pre and post-tax. If you believe your income is going to rise substantially over the next few years, you may be locked out of putting money into a Roth IRA, but perhaps that might be a good time for you to consider taking some of the rollover IRA and starting to convert that into a Roth. Right now, you have two income ranges I want you to bear in mind. One is this Roth IRA limit where, if you're single or head of household, if you make less than 125 grand AGI, you can make a full Roth contribution. Then we have your actual tax bracket. And that is right now, you're single will bring you into the 24% tax bracket. It'll bring you up to about 165 grand. So that gives you a little bit of room where you could potentially start converting some of that existing rollover IRA. And again, we're trying to do this to leverage the fact that you're in the 24% tax bracket and that you may see your income rise in the future and therefore you would jump into a higher tax bracket, but also that you may actually see tax rates rise in the future overall. Last bit, 90% stocks always makes me feel a little anxious. How about going 80-20? That's what I'm going to go for. All right. You're listening to Jill on Money. If you need some help and you would like me to weigh on your future retirement date, working longer is better, gang. Just give us a holler. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that attempts to take the mystery out of your financial life. We can only do that if you give us a shout. Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'd love to hear from you, want to know what your financial questions are, and let us know if you'd like to join us on the air. That is where we are focusing our efforts. We want to get more of your voices on the air. And so today we get to actually bring someone on who Mark and I know pretty well. She's an old friend of ours from this show and from a previous life. So on the line, we have Teresa. She's on with us from Washington, D.C. Tell us what is going on for you and how Mark and I can hold your hand and help you out.
Yes. Well, about a month ago, my dad passed away from cancer. And in the process, I inherited his construction business. So I am now, in addition to trying to make all of the death notifications and dealing with the banks and so on and so forth, I am trying to figure out what steps I should take to take over this business and keep everything up and running successfully and keeping the employees happy.
So, first of all, I am so sorry. It must have been just awful. It's not only that it's cancer, but it's cancer amid a pandemic. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Yeah, it was difficult, but it was expected. So I had time to prepare.
Yeah. So, okay, here's the question I have. So, let's talk about the construction business for a second. Do you intend to work there full time, or are you just going to try to operate in conjunction with someone who will be doing day to day?
That's correct. So I still have my full time job, which I intend on keeping. I will just be working very closely with the accountant and the cost estimator. Probably go in there once a week or so just to make sure everything is running efficiently. And then who knows, maybe 6 months to a year from now, I'll reevaluate and see if I want to do that full time, depending on how the company is doing and how it's growing.
Are you the sole heir? Do you have siblings or a mom who's a part of this as well?
So I am the only child. Everything in the inheritance, the will, trust, all of that goes to my mom, but she does not want to take over the business. So we're in the process of getting it transferred from her name to my name.
So she's going to disclaim this part. This is a weird thing in estate rules that where you can basically say, "Hey, I know I'm due this, but I can pretend I really don't want it," and then it goes to the next person, which would be you. Okay, so there was a will, right?
Yes, we were very fortunate to get all of that done actually about 10 days before he passed.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy.
Yes,
Okay, so there was a will. Is there also a trust?
yes, there's a trust.
And there's plenty of other assets for mom, so that's why the business can get carved out of this?
Correct.
Okay, great. So, in the business, you said there's employees. How many employees are there?
So there are 28 who are either full time or part time on the books. And then my dad also had seasonal employees because I'm not sure if you know, but with construction, the winter time is the slowest time. So he would
Mm.
tend to lay off a few people and then hire them back in April.
That's a big undertaking. Okay. So you said there's a CPA that your father had worked with, right?
He's just an accountant. We do have an outside CPA only to deal with the year end financials.
Okay, great. And you like this guy or gal?
I do. Yes, he's good.
Okay, great. Fantastic. The attorney who drafted all the estate documents, you're working with that attorney kind of in the whole disclaiming process. You're working with the estate attorney who's making notifications and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
Is there an attorney for the business as well?
No, and that's one of the things the accountant and I discussed. We need to hire a lawyer for the company.
Yeah. If you like the estate attorney and you like the accountant, I think you should start the process to interview some attorneys for the business itself, for sure. Because look, this is going to be thorny and you got to make sure all of the nature of the filings, I don't know the structure of the business, whether it's an S Corp, a C Corp, or an LLC, but you want to just make sure that because you're inheriting this, of course, you are going to have tax liability. Are there any of the employees who are also shareholders in the company?
Just the one, the accountant.
I mean, look, there's a few things that I would think about when I take over a new business, and you're going to get immersed in it. I'm sure you've lived with it because, usually it's, if it's a family business, you've probably been around it a lot of your life. You really want to get a sense of, how much money is coming in, what's going out. That's like the simple stuff, and you'll work with the accountant on that. But from the legal aspect, is the structure of the business the right structure now that you are essentially you're the owner but not the operator, right? And to really understand if there is some structure that makes sense for you that is different than what may have made sense for your mom and dad. I'm really intrigued by this idea that I wonder if you're going to kind of fall in love with this business or not. I don't know. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Do you have a sense of that?
Actually, one of my family friends told me that she sees me leaving my government job and doing this full time.
I mean, I know you, so I have inside knowledge. So, listeners, I'm sorry to say that because I know Teresa personally, it's not that I know you that well, but I do think that you have a personality of a business owner, meaning that you're very diligent, you are on top of things, you are detail oriented, but you can also pick your head up and look at the long term. And I think that those are some of the combination of traits that can make for a really good business owner. Whether you like this particular business or not will be interesting to see. But I love the idea of taking the year. I think that from your personal perspective, it also may make sense that now you're going to have a different status in terms of taxes, right? Because this business, because you own it, is probably going to throw off some income to you. Do you work with a CPA yourself to do your taxes, or do you do it yourself?
No, I absolutely have someone to do them for me.
Okay, so I would also bring your personal CPA into the conversation because you may now find yourself, instead of being a nicely paid government employee with certain amount of predictability of income, with a very different tax situation. Maybe you're going to get distributions. You've got to set up a way to pay quarterly taxes on that. Maybe it's going to be smarter for you to have some sort of involvement in the business that allows you to use their retirement plan in addition to your federal retirement plan. We don't know. But I think it really does make sense to involve your CPA into this, make sure that you're accounting for that. And as you said, a year from now, you're going to have a lot of information. And I think that it's going to be, to me, a very exciting time for you to decide whether or not this is something you want to pursue longer term. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Have I missed anything? Any other questions that are floating out there?
No, I think you pretty much covered it all. I do need to speak with the CPA about what the tax implications would be, both for me and for the business, because I know my father was not taking a paycheck. He was 75, so he was getting Social Security and everything. But I know that if I were to draw a paycheck from the business, they would have to pay more taxes. And then I have no idea what that would do to my tax bracket.
Right. And maybe it's not, because maybe you're not really working there. So maybe it is perfect to say I have an ownership stake and there might be a distribution. Do you happen to know what is the format of the company, if whether it's a C corp, an S corp, or an LLC?
It's a C corp.
It's interesting. The structure is there. I think that you need to balance what's best for you personally and also what works for the business. And I'm sure you're going to put the business first, but down the line, you may find that the balance could shift some. So here's my 2 cents about running a small business, which I ran, a similar size, 50 people or less. And that is that the things that you think are really important right now, like I got to talk to the attorney and the accountant, I got to get my arms around the money, you're going to find really that the job is about knowing your employees, knowing the people who work there, really responding to what they need, and managing the business and the needs of the people there. And as always, if you put the business first, things usually work out in the end. So it's a crazy time. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss, but I am very intrigued to see what this next chapter means for you, Teresa.
Well, thank you. I will definitely keep you updated.
We're always here for you, Teresa. Don't worry. Mark and I, we always loved you. So you always took care of us. We take care of you whenever you need us. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Okay, we're going to get back to more of your questions in just a minute. During this break, why don't you go to our website? Go to jillonmoney.com and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. It's free. Just go to jillonmoney.com. Okay, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are trying to help you navigate your financial questions, some of your short-term, intermediate, long-term planning issues, whatever's on your mind. We'd love to hear from you. And, I do like talking to you better in person. I have become my mother. This is clear. And so I do like hearing your voices. I think that we do a better job of getting to the bottom of your question when you're willing to come on the air with us. Are you shy? Because some of you have said, yes, I'd love to come on. And then Mark contacts you and you're like, oh, I don't know. And you get all nervous. Change your name, change your state. Doesn't matter. Come on. But join us. You will get more out of the experience. I promise that you never know. I just sent like an audio memo to someone who had actually had been on the show just to give her a little bump, a little upside, like way to go and keep on the right track. So, never know what I might find for you. You might find my voice on your inbox. Never know. Anyway, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That is what Sam did. Sam writes, my wife and I have our fully funded emergency fund, 85 grand. It's sitting in a high yield savings account with CIT. When we opened it, they were paying the highest rates. Maybe it was over 2%, but the rate is continually whittled away, just like it has at all the other banks. As I write this, we're getting a solid 0.54%. By the way, 0.54% is not bad these days. Okay. Sam goes on. He says, while working out today and listening to your podcast, yeah, I know it's weird, but I like listening to podcasts while I work out. I like that. I heard you again mention depositaccounts.com. It made me find my way over there to check out what rates are available. It looks like the best rate I could get on a savings account is an exciting 1% at a bank I've never heard of. Is it worth my time to move my money for an extra 0.46%? I don't want to throw away $400 a year. I'm guessing I'm not guaranteed that 1% will stick around. Maybe it'll get smaller over time too. At what point would you move the money? I don't want to open and close accounts every other month. I get that. Well, I mean, one other thing to do, I guess, is to take some portion of the money you have with CIT, maybe take 20 grand and see if they've got a higher yielding, maybe a CD or something that's available. I know $400 a year doesn't seem like a ton, but it's efficient. It'll probably be locked in that rate for a little bit. But listen, interest rates are low and I don't want to go crazy either, but I don't know. Do you think $400 is worth it, Mark? Would you do that? Probably no, I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't either. It's all right. I mean, if you're happy with it, it's easy, fine. If it's a little bit more money, maybe, or maybe just throw some money in a CD somewhere just to get like 20 or 25 grand, a little bit higher. But even those rates stink. So anyway. All right. Ross says he found the podcast by accident. Are you guys, by the way, all jealous of these people who are listening to us every single day and you're not? Well, listen to what Ross writes. Hey, Jill, I found your podcast by accident and now I'm hooked. That's right. We hook you. I'm a daily listener. I can't wait to hear what the daily subject is. My wife and I would like to retire at age 62 if possible. We got a late start saving. We're trying to play catch up after sending 2 kids to college. Well, congratulations on those 2 kids. We are both 55 years old currently. Our combined income is around $120,000. Excellent. We are both putting $15,000 a year in our 401k and 403bs. We have both started funding Roths, $7,000 each. That's great. We have around $340,000 in our retirement plans, 15 each in the Roths. We also have a $25,000 emergency fund. So basically, most of our money is in pre-tax accounts. My question is, these last 7 years, should we be more focused on putting more money in some post-tax accounts or brokerage accounts so all of our money isn't pre-tax money? I absolutely love listening to your show. That is so nice. Thank you, Ross. Similar question that we had earlier. Really interesting that this is a question that's starting to percolate. Difference here is that in our earlier question, the person asking was single. And so that meant that she was in the 24% tax bracket, whereas Ross and his wife are in the 22% tax bracket. Here's my question. Same thing. Should you have a Roth option in either of your accounts, either a Roth 401k or a Roth 403b? That would be really great. That really would be great. If you don't, you're still doing your Roths, that's okay. Then your other option is to pay the tax and have a larger, just sort of a general investment account. I mean, that's not going to be as tax efficient, but if you truly do want to retire at age 62, Couple of things you should think about. Number one, where are you getting your health insurance from, right? Because you would be 3 years before you got to Medicare. Number two, at 62, it would be great if you didn't have to touch that money that you have saved. And you say that one of you has a 403B. I'm wondering if one of you is entitled to a pension. So I have more questions here before we think about this, but having some money that's already been taxed would be a good idea, but I do need a little bit more to go on. So send me a follow-up. I would so appreciate it. And wait a minute. Why don't you come on the podcast with us? Come on. Let's get your voice out there. Okay. Oh my gosh, this is a really long one, Mark. I'm never going to get to it for this one. So let me finish this off. Okay. All right. Other questions that we have been getting that I should just make a note about is that I haven't really come out and said the student debt cancelization that's being contemplated. I'm going to think more about this, guys. I'm going to do some research. I do think there is right now, my two biggest issues are not really moral ones, but that's $1 trillion or $1.3 trillion we're just going to wipe off the board. And, when you wipe debt off, it doesn't stimulate the economy. It relieves people, but it doesn't stimulate the economy. And right now, I'd rather have like $1 trillion to give to states. But there's only so much money out there. But I really need to think about this more. So I promise I'm going to do that. And I'll let you know when I write about it. Okay? Fair enough? Excellent. All right, you're listening to Jill on Money. When we return, we will get back to your questions. During the break, hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com. And there you can subscribe to the podcast. That's what you should be doing, okay? Do that during the break. It's so easy. It's called Jill on Money. Convenient, right? We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are clicking away through your emails. Mark, how is the inbox right now? Is it a little less bulgy, or is it still... Remember when we used to try to, I would say by the end of the year, I wanted to clear out our inbox? Is that an impossibility now? If you had to guess right now how many emails that are sitting in there that we haven't yet answered, hazard a guess to me, and I will not expose you. Oof, we got a ways to go. All right, well, be patient, gang. We're working our way through. We'll be working our way back to you, babe. That's what I would be playing right now as I think about that. Anyway, send us your questions. We will try to get to you as quickly as possible. But hey, Mark, this is the deal, though. If you come on the program, you get priority. You jump ahead. So if you're willing to come on the show, that's one way to get your question answered quickly. You must come on the air with us. Mark will arrange it. It's so easy. Okay. Jason writes, thank you for all you do to spread financial sense. I figured it was finally time to email you today. I am 52 years old, in good health, single, and I earn $97,000 a year as a teacher in Washington State. I don't have any children. I owe $200,000 on my house. The mortgage payment monthly is $2,300. So that's mortgage, insurance, and property taxes. I have a 15-year loan at 3.68%. I have 12 years left to pay it off. My take-home pay is roughly $5,500 a month. I have $50,000 in cash in a checking account. I have a Roth IRA valued at $185,000. And guess what? Jason's a play. It's all in individual stocks. Wow. I invest 5% of my salary to a supplemental retirement account. It has $180,000 value, and I have it in a target retirement fund. I have no credit card debt. My car and motorcycle are almost paid off. House value about $600,000. Okay, here come the questions. You ready? 1, I've been thinking about paying extra here and there on my mortgage to pay it off in 10 years or less so I can save more money my final 4 to 5 years of teaching. Is that a good idea? No, it is not. Don't do that. You want your money liquid, okay? And that's where you're going to be saving that money right now. Just click along. You don't accelerate it. Please just really keep that money invested. You need to have access to your money. That's what liquidity means. It's not sitting in your house. 2, Roth IRA. Should I sell my individual stocks and go with a low-cost fund with Fidelity or someone else? I'm not a stock picker, okay? And so what I would say is I always like index funds. Fidelity's got a boatload of cheap index funds, a well-diversified portfolio with some stocks, some bonds, some big stocks, some small stocks, some international. I think it'll do you well. It's just easier. Question. Am I going to be okay in retirement in your eyes? I mean, assuming I'm healthy and can work until I'm 66 or 67? Sounds like it. You're a teacher. You're going to get a pension. So I think you're going to be just fine. Doesn't sound like you spend a lot of money and you save a lot. So that's good. All right, here's the next part. Jason wants to know, do I recommend him seeing a financial planner? Nope. You don't need it. You're in great shape. And what's so nice, Jason listens to us on Cairo FM in Seattle. Love that station. And he listens to the interviews that I do with Dave Ross on Mondays on Cairo. And thank you for any guidance or ideas you can share. Have a safe and great holiday season. Sincerely, Jason. Jason, you're in great shape. You don't need a financial advisor. Mark, you don't think he needs a financial advisor, do you? I think he's in good shape. Negative. All right, let's do one more here. Okay, this is from Paul, who says he listens to the radio show in Georgia, the most southern sounding market, Peachtree City. How about that? Okay, Paul says we owe $121,000 on a mortgage. They've got $350,000 in stocks and Roth IRA, $110,000 in a 401k, and $30,000 in cash. Should we add to our investment accounts or pay down the mortgage? Right now, we do both. Thanks. You didn't mention how old you are, but as you just heard in the previous message, I am not a huge fan of paying down mortgages. I just am not. And so I like the idea that you save more and you can add to these accounts. It's all good. When I talk about liquidity, what I'm saying to you guys is that once you pay down that mortgage, you don't have the money anymore. You don't have it. It's gone to pay down the mortgage, right? And when you put the money in a retirement account, whether it's pre-tax or post-tax, or an investment account, you have access to the money. And that's really critical as you get to your retirement years. Access to the money. That's what liquidity means. And once you pay off the mortgage, I get it. You'll have cash flow. You won't have as many bills, but you will not have had the power of compounding and the time that's on your side. So it's very rare that I say pay off the mortgage. It's usually because you have so much money and, ain't going to hurt you at all. All right. Okay. Send us your questions. We'd love to hear from you. You can do that by going to the website, jillonmoney.com. And we have a contact button. It's right there for you. So easy. And you can do all sorts of things. Poke around the website. We've got resource section. You can read things that I've written, listen to past shows, and watch TV segments. By the way, even though I didn't think I did a great job on TV this week, my mother said my hair looked great, and she loved the color of my dress. So I'm going to hang on to that for the rest of the day. Why not? Okay, Jill on Money. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? What is it? All right. So want to remind you, keep sending us your questions. We're going to do the best we can to plow through them. As you've already heard, we've got many that are queued up, but tell us if you want to come on the air with us. Terry writes, I'm retiring in February. I will have enough money in my 401k and 457 accounts to pay off my house with approximately 10 grand left over. What is this? These are like some wild questions, Mark. Did you clump them together just knowing that they should all be in the same genre? You are so smart. Terry says, would I be better off putting the money in stocks that pay a dividend that would make my house payment or pay the house off? Oh, no, no, no. First of all, when you have money in your 401k and a 457, Terry, you pull that money out, it's taxable to you. So even when you're retiring, you're going to have to pay tax on it. So don't do that. I'm guessing that maybe you've got a pension out there. Guys, before you start these are such knee-jerk reactions to a huge change in your life, which is called retirement. So I would like to know more about it. What will your pension be? Are you eligible for Social Security? What else do you have saved outside of these accounts? And how much are we talking about? You know? So no, Terry, no, no, no. It sounds very bad when I say that over and over, Mark. I don't know. That's kind of a tough one. People don't like I love my mortgage. Let me borrow more money at these rates. Come on. We have a great guest who's coming up. His name is Simon Sinek. He is a very famous guy for TED Talks. He has written a book, and this was an interview we did before the pandemic. The book was called The Infinite Game. And so we're going to talk about that and leadership and organizations and what he calls the infinite mindset. You're listening to Jill on Money. More when we return.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. It's hour number 2, and we are broadcasting from the Policy Genius virtual studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. And, okay, so remember that the way the structure of the show has basically evolved is that we do all the questions that we can in the first hour. You can send us anything that's on your mind. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you're on the website at jillonmoney.com, all you have to do is just click the contact button. In the second hour, we like to do an interview. And we had all these interviews that we had done early in the year, pre-COVID. And we did not actually get to air them because, weird things took over. So we are now starting to go through our, what should I say, library, Mark, or our backlog. And Mark came across this interview that we had done with a guy named Simon Sinek. Now, he's an interesting dude because I think that we must have heard of him first because he had a book, but he also had this big TED Talk. This says on his website that he is known for popularizing the concept of why in this TED Talk, and it was a 2009 TED Talk. It rose to become the third most watched on TED.com, 40 million views. Whoa. So that said, he then wrote a book, and Mark said, I think this guy's going to be a good guest. So he was in the studio with us. Remember when we used to do that, Mark? We had a studio. And we wanted to give this interview to you because it's interesting. So here is the first part of our interview with Simon Sinek. What's your best financial or career decision you've ever made?
The best career decision I ever made. Look, I could say, the best career decision I ever made was quitting to do my own thing, but that led to disaster. My business, I lost my passion for what I was doing, and my business wasn't doing well. So I would say that the best business decision, the best career decision I ever made was learning the lesson that I don't have to know all the answers. And if I don't have to pretend that I do. When I had my own business, I thought because I was the boss, I had to know all the answers. And if I didn't, I definitely pretended that I did.
Yeah.
And that's what took my business in a bad direction. And it was only when I learned the lesson to ask for help and admit that I didn't know something did things completely reverse.
Tell us about yourself. So people may know your name from a TED Talk, from your book called The Infinite Game. But who are you? What's your story? Where'd you grow up?
First and foremost, I'm an optimist.
I don't know what that means. That's so fascinating.
I want to define myself by who I am, not what I do. It's so funny on the backs of books, and you see these blurbs. It says, name, author, CEO, blah, blah. We're defining ourselves by our work or by our product. But what happens if you're no longer the CEO? What happens if you're no longer writing books? Are you still those things? So first and foremost, I'm an optimist. I think my worldview was formed, by my upbringing, of course. I had an amazing upbringing. I grew up all over the world as a kid. Born in England, moved to South Africa, moved back to England, moved to Hong Kong, and then moved to exotic New Jersey.
Why don't you have a cooler accent if you've lived all those places?
Well, I was a kid when I came to America, and when I go to England to talk to my parents or watch Top Gear, my accent gets very English.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your career and this business, and then you'll lead us into the paradox of being a human being.
Well, my career, the current path that I'm on, was a complete accident. I started off in the ad world and quit and started my own little marketing consultancy.
Do you know why I knew you were in the ad world?
Why?
You got great hair.
That's very kind.
I'm just saying that most people...
Is there a correlation?
Yes, a very strong correlation.
So if you have great hair, go into advertising?
At least with guys.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Didn't
bald
know
guys
that.
go into investment banking.
That's funny.
Interesting.
Well, maybe they started off in advertising and then went into banking as they got older? No.
I don't know. I don't think so. So advertising.
So I was in the ad world, had a good career there, quit my job, started my own thing, and that went well for a couple years. But my fourth year in business, there's this statistic that hangs over your head when you start a business that the vast majority, 90-something%, fail in the first 3 years. And so once I got through the first 3 years, I had joined a very sort of special club in America, of entrepreneurs who'd sort of survived. But that fourth year was very, very different because that drive and excitement had worn off, the novelty had worn off, and now I had the difficult job of actually building the structure of building a business. And my passion fell out of me. I mean, I lost my passion for my own work, and I was quite frankly embarrassed because superficially my life was good, right? I had my own business, we had great clients, we did great work, but I didn't want to wake up and do it again. And so I kept that to myself. A lot of my days were spent lying, hiding, and faking. I was pretending that I was happier, more successful, and more in control than I felt. And it wasn't until a very dear friend of mine came to me and said, "I'm worried about you. Something's different, something's wrong." And it gave me a safe space to come clean.
What a friend.
I know. I'm immensely and eternally grateful. It released all this energy, all of that energy that went into pretending every day could now go into finding a solution. And the solution I found was this thing that I called the why. I knew what I did. I knew how I did it, but I didn't know why I was doing it. And I learned that based on the biology of human decision-making, that was the missing piece. And so I became obsessed with my why. And it restored my passion to levels I'd never experienced before. I shared with my friends, because that's what you do when you discover something wonderful. You tell your friends about it. My friends started making crazy life changes. And people just kept asking me. Friends would invite me to come to their apartments in New York City and share it with their friends. I literally would stand in someone's living room and talk about the why and help people find their why for $100 on the side. People just kept inviting me and I just kept saying yes. And so my career took an entirely different path.
What are the questions? Because you wrote a book that's called Start With Why. So what are some of the questions that you think we could ask ourselves if we're feeling in that rut?
What is so important to you that is worth sacrificing? Money is not it. That you're willing to sacrifice your personal life, that you're willing to travel a lot and miss your family, not be there to raise your kids. What are you working on that all of those sacrifices are worth it? Turn down a better high-paying job to stay where you are. People do that all the time because there are things that are more important to us than making money. We know that. Like everybody knows that. So the question is can you put into words what is so important to you that you would be willing to sacrifice? And that doesn't mean you have to enjoy the frequent business trips or being away from your family. Of course, we all want to make more money, but you don't enjoy it, but it feels worth it. And that's the path you want to take yourself on. And the way you find your why is you look for patterns in your life, which is you look for all the times where you did have immense joy, that you were in the flow or whatever you want to call it. Whether it was commercially successful or not, you just felt like this was the best thing in the world. I want to keep doing this. And what you'll discover is in all of those peaks, there's a pattern, and that pattern is your why.
I really wish I met you about 20 years ago. I feel like you might have saved me, A, a lot of emotional distress and therapy appointments, but B, also money and time.
Yeah.
Like these are big parts of your life that are sort of quickly fading away.
And people start thinking about their legacies in the latter half of their years. It's like second-term presidents think about their legacies, first-term presidents think about their re-elections, you know? So, and we're all the same. And so the question is, to adopt an infinite mindset means we start thinking about our legacies at 19 or 20 years old, not at 65 or 70. You start thinking what you're going to leave behind at the beginning of your professional life, not at the end of your professional life.
We'll get back to our interview with Simon Sinek in just a moment. During the break, hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com, and there, sign up for the free weekly newsletter. You can do it. It's so easy. Okay, we'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to try to help you walk through the treacherous financial waters that are out there. Send us an email if you've got a question. It's very easy to do. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We're going to get back to our interview with Simon Sinek. And now in this part of the interview, we're talking about how the infinite mindset relates to all of us. Here is more of our interview with Simon Sinek. Are we talking about something that is a privilege of the wealthy? In other words, so translate this to like middle-class person listening to this right now. Like, hey, I'm grinding it out. I'm a teacher and I'm working hard and all I can think about is getting to retirement.
Yeah. So an infinite mindset, in fact, quite the opposite. I find that people who've had great commercial success, great financial success, actually, they're the ones who unfortunately have defined success as numbers. People who are definitely in a service realm, whether it's military or public service or teachers, they went into their professions knowing they weren't going to get rich. And so the healthier ones looked for alternative definitions of success. So it doesn't matter what our jobs are, how much money we have. The question is, are we contributing to something bigger than ourselves? And a teacher who's just looking forward to retirement, I would say, has lost that infinite mindset.
Right. They might have had it in the beginning.
They might have had it at the beginning.
Maybe they're burnt out.
And so the question is it's not just helping kids. Like, of course, that's what all teachers do.
Right.
You know, but it's like I went into this profession because I imagine a world that is different to the world we live in now. And I want to advance towards that idealized state of the world. And I choose teaching as a means to get there, right? So in the United States, an example of that is the Declaration of Independence. Our founding fathers wrote down for us that they imagined a world in which all people were created equal, endowed with unalienable rights, amongst which include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they won the revolution. Now the heavy lifting begins. And you can see these milestones in American history that show us that we're trying to move towards that ideal. The abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights, gay rights, like all of these huge milestones, which are imperfect and still ongoing themselves.
Yeah.
But you can see that we're trying to move towards an ideal. And we will never get there, but we will die trying. And that's the point. That's what gives our life and our work meaning, that we're moving towards an ideal state and we feel like the world is better and that we got to contribute to it. We left this world in better state than we found it.
One of the things that you take certain industries to task, for example, financial services or big companies where they're managing quarter to quarter, profitability, and it seems that every time someone reaches beyond that, that they somehow get burned. It's very weird to me.
Look, we live in a twisted world right now.
Right?
We live in a twisted world right now where when companies decide to reinvest in themselves, Wall Street punishes them. Well, aren't they supposed to be building strong companies? You know, we live in a world where when you have mass layoffs, your stock price goes up. WTF? Like, what kind of world are we living in? You know, where companies literally, CEOs and executives are literally They have pressure put on them to make decisions that they know are bad for their companies and avoid making decisions that they know are good for their companies. The form of capitalism that we have today is not the capitalism that Adam Smith imagined 240 some odd years ago.
Forget about Adam Smith. My grandfather was the CEO of a company. It's not, and this was 80 years ago. That's not his company.
But this new twisted, bastardized form of capitalism where we prioritize short-term over long-term and shareholders over customers or employees really began in the 1970s. It was you know this. I mean, it was in Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman theorized that the responsibility of business was to maximize profit within the bounds of the law. That was the responsibility of business. Like, what about ethics? And so that became sort of the banner for this new breed of capitalists that were coming up in the 80s and 90s, the folks like Jack Welch.
Oh, I was just thinking about him as you were saying that.
He was the poster child for everything that's broken about capitalism today. You know, he was pioneering rank and yank, where you promote the top 10% of your people who contribute to the stock price and you fire the bottom 10%. The whole idea of internal competition inside companies. The whole idea of shareholder supremacy, where you prioritize the wants, needs, and desires of an external disinterested constituency over the people who are sacrificing for your company and buying your product, which is the same as a coach who's trying to build a good team by taking advice from the fans rather than taking care of the players. Like, that's what shareholder supremacy is. It's the madness of it. They eviscerated Glass-Steagall in the 80s and 90s. Glass-Steagall was passed after the Great Depression to prevent another Great Depression from happening.
Seemed to work pretty well.
And between the Great Depression and the evisceration of it in the 80s and 90s, the total number of stock crashes we had was zero.
Right.
Since the evisceration, we had 87, we had .com in 2008.
What do you think when you hear Jamie Dimon, Business Roundtable, they come out and they're like, oh, you know what, we have other constituencies?
Superficially, it's a good thing because it's proof that folks like you and me who are talking about this stuff, the pressure that we're exerting on these very, very powerful people is working. That they would come out and even make a statement like that, we couldn't imagine that 10 years ago.
Right.
It just would never have happened.
Right.
So power to the people, that's what that is. That's proof that the people still have power, that we can exert that kind of pressure. However, the statement that they released read like sort of generic values that a company writes on their wall but doesn't actually live or breathe. The spokespeople that they had in the press release, I mean, Jamie Dimon, who basically when he talks about it, talks about giving back to the community.
Yeah, he's his big project in Detroit.
What we're talking about is giving to charity. Right? You could be a horrible person that gives to charity. You can be a horrible company that gives back to your community. It's much bigger than that. Being purpose-driven is not primarily about your CSR program. And then you had the CEO of Johnson & Johnson as another one of the signatories. Johnson & Johnson was fined over $500 million for their contribution to the opioid crisis. I mean, they picked the worst spokespeople to make the statement.
Let's talk a little bit about the technology sector.
Sure.
My new favorite people to bring. You know, because I sort of feel like the technology sector right now is sort of going through
what banking went through.
Yeah,
like
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, it does feel very reminiscent. I mean, I just said before you came in here, I was reading the newspaper and I had a picture up and I said to Mark, I'm like, you know what? I hate these people from Facebook. And he says, you know, you've said that about 1,000 times. Like, I say it every day. And it's not just Facebook; it's a lot of them. But let's call them the poster children.
Facebook has become the poster child, like GE was the poster child.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's use that. So, what is their finite mindset that's operating right now?
Well, it seems that they're more interested in protecting their business model than advancing their cause. And you know, when the company was founded, you know, Zuckerberg had the opportunity to become one of the great leaders.
Yeah.
You know, he could have become one of the ones that we're now telling stories about, and you know, the storied leaders. And he had a cause, and the company was setting itself on a path really to advance that cause. And I'm not sure when or how, but something went a little bit sideways where protecting the business model became more important than advancing the cause.
Let's say that they brought you in. They say, Simon, come in here.
Yeah.
Wave your magic wand. What would you want to happen at Facebook to kind of course correct right now?
Well, number one, I think they need to be reminded as to what their just cause is, and that takes a priority over absolutely everything. And even if it means losing money or cutting businesses in the short term that would hurt them financially, it's the right thing to do for the future. And there's plenty of precedents for that. I mean, if you look at what Bob Iger and Tom Staggs did at Disney, it was kind of amazing, right? They sat there when Michael Eisner had moved out. Tom and Bob sat down and said, let's look at the portfolio called Disney, because Mike Eisner became obsessed at the end of his career with sort of world domination.
Yeah, I know.
And, you know, and wanted to be in every category in every sector. And he did a lot of damage to the Disney brand, and to, they used to attract the top talent, and now the top talent was fleeing. And so one of the things they did is they looked at the businesses that didn't make sense to the cause that Walt Disney had given them. This good, clean family fund, this place to escape our stresses. And so they owned a music label that released songs from like death metal bands. There was a band called World War III from Disney, right? So it didn't matter if it was profitable enough or not. They sold it off.
Right.
They used to make Quentin Tarantino films. Like, we love Quentin Tarantino films, but
not under that label.
Not from Disney.
Right.
They sold it off. And if you've noticed, Disney has never and will never go into gaming. Like, they would have the best casino ever on the Las Vegas Strip. They own Star Wars and Marvel and all the Disney. It would be incredible. They'll never do it because gaming violates the values that Walt Disney put out for them. And so there's this incredible discipline and their willingness to hurt themselves in the short term financially because it was the right thing to do. And we've seen what happened. Disney has completely restored the luster. And the same thing can happen at Facebook.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment. Hey, during the break, here's something fun to do. You can just go to JillOnMoney.com, to that website, and bookmark it. And then you can always go back to it later. And if you have a question or anything's going on, we've got a contact button there. So check it out, JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are about to conclude our interview with Simon Sinek. And he just writes a lot about leadership and organizations, and I think that he's a very interesting guy. In this next part of the interview, we start talking about big tech. And, as I said, we recorded this interview pre-COVID. So there are a lot of things that have been happening with technology of late. Some, obviously, all these tech executives have been trotted out in front of congressional subcommittees. In this part of the interview, we're talking about Mark Zuckerberg explicitly. And you'll hear me refer to a he, that's Mark Zuckerberg, because we'd had a longer conversation about that. I think that it is becoming abundantly clear that these big tech firms are getting so big that they are impossible to regulate. So I am hopeful that a new administration will take a good, long, hard look at making them a little slimmer, reducing some of their power, maybe not breaking them up in a bad way, in a good way. Anyway, here is the remainder of our interview with Simon Sinek. At some point, he and the people around him have to be willing to hear it.
See, here's the problem. They know these.
They know what they have to do.
They know these. I mean, it's not like I'm going to go in there and ask them questions they have not been asked or tell them things that they don't know.
But they don't want to.
I mean, it's the same with investment bankers. I mean, it's the same for all these companies.
Yeah, the difference I feel like with, at least in the banking sector, when the market pops you, like just really knocks you upside the head, then at least in the short term, it gives you a moment to say like, oh, I got to figure this out. Facebook has suffered reputationally.
I think the thing that these large companies forget is size is no indication of stability, and big just means you're big.
Yeah.
And wealth absolutely helps you survive scandal for longer because you can pay your way out of it and you can suffer financial losses for longer. But it is not a foregone conclusion that you'll survive. And we've seen WorldCom, Enron, Tyco. We've seen large companies that have prioritized the short term over the long term evaporate overnight. Lehman Brothers. I don't think there's a foregone conclusion that Facebook is going to be around in 20 years and definitely not survive Zuckerberg's when he eventually leaves the planet.
I almost feel like part of the problem is that you have this, feels like CEOs run amok, right? And there's no accountability, but we have these sycophantic boards that just sort of kiss their butts and let them do whatever they want. And then the sycophantic shareholders who don't want to do anything either. And so in that respect, I really believe we could create a structure to make them better, but they have to want to be better themselves.
I think we should take notes from what we talked about a minute ago about the business roundtable, which is in all leadership theory, one thing that anybody who studies the subject knows is the people always have the power. This is why dictators fear the people. This is why they have fake elections. It's why they bus in people and pay them so that they'll, have a rally that shows support. The people have the power. And so the public pressure is a real thing. And I think that remember, Facebook tends to skew an older demographic. And so I think young people who are more aware of this and don't have any kind of locked in relationship to Facebook, I think they're going to start to see the number of people that they have on their platform just go down. Because at the end of the day, one of the huge advantages of online businesses is it's a low barrier to entry. Anybody can join. But it's also a low barrier to exit.
Right.
Which is nobody's actually loyal to online companies, right? Because we don't have a real relationship with them. It's an online relationship. So Amazon is a great example. We like Amazon. We like Amazon a lot. But do we love Amazon? The standard I use is if you got a free t-shirt with their logo, would you wear it out proudly? Would you wear it to paint the house and or to sleep in? If you got an Amazon t-shirt, would you wear that with pride on a weekend? No, probably not, because we like Amazon, but we don't love Amazon. And if something better came along, we're gone. And so the more that Bezos can expand, sort of his connection with us in our lives, the less likely we are to move because it becomes more difficult to offer an alternative competitive product. I think Facebook is the same, which is there's nothing to say that we wouldn't abandon them. They buy the companies that we abandon them for. I mean, they bought Instagram.
Right.
And lied to Instagram and lied to WhatsApp, promised them that they wouldn't violate their values and did. And both those founders left, quit. Unceremoniously.
I just want to read this because I love this. This is from Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. You should also buy his 2 other books, Start With Why and Leaders Eat Last. Those who are unsure whether their purpose, mission, or vision statement is a just cause, or those interested in leading with a just cause, can use these standards as a simple test. I love this. A just cause must be, for something, affirmative and optimistic, inclusive, open to all those who would like to contribute, service-oriented for the primary benefit of others, resilient, able to endure political, technological, and cultural change, idealistic, big, bold, and ultimately unachievable. So here's what I did. I read this. I dog-eared it, and I thought to myself, you know what? This makes sense. This is why I'm so happy where I am today, because it is not achievable. And I think that was the thing. That was like my red herring. I always thought it had to be a number, a dollar, a goal, a title, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And now what I always say is, here's the mantra of the show and why I go on TV. This is Jill on Money, where I take the mystery out of your financial life. I'm never going to do that. I try.
No, it's about advancing, not about achieving.
Right.
The infinite game is about advancing something. The achievements, the finite components in the infinite game are the milestones. Like there's still finite games in the infinite game.
Right.
But they're milestones that advance towards them. In other words, you want to hit this certain number or you want to hit this milestone for a reason. The way I like to equate it, we overuse sports analogies and war analogies in business because it's all about winning and, sort of launching things and stuff like that. The better analogy is more like exercise or lifestyle.
Yes.
Right? You can have health goals. I want to lose X amount of weight by X date. And if you achieve that goal, you feel really great. And that goal helps motivate you and build that healthy lifestyle. But if you miss the goal, you're still way healthier now than you were. And you'll hit that goal a month or 2 later. Like it's fine. And that's how we should be treating our business. Which is you absolutely should have goals, but they're there to drive you and motivate you and keep you focused. But if you miss them, your business is still way healthier than it was, and you just stay on the path, you'll be fine. But to reward people for hitting arbitrary goals, even though a different leader might be building a healthy lifestyle, is how we have to think about it. We have to think about business more like a exercise and less like a game of baseball or football.
Thanks so much to Simon Sinek for joining us. Again, that was a pre-COVID interview that we are airing now. We're starting to go through the library and bring some more to you. We'll keep doing that. If you have ideas for people you'd love to hear on the air, then just let us know. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
We're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life, but only if you help us solve the mystery with you. Mark, are you a man of mysteries? Do you like mysteries? I myself like a good mystery. And these are some of the things that I like to binge on Netflix or streaming services during the pandemic. I found one that I like now, Mark. It's called The 12. It is Belgian and about a jury in Belgium that has to figure out whether this woman committed murder or not. So I kind of like that. And it's kind of consistent with our brand, taking the mystery out of your financial life. I think that's kind of good. If you have a financial question, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's what Lara did. And she says, "Hi, Jill and Mark. Hope you are well. Thank you in advance for reviewing my following question. I have the option through my company to participate in a non-qualified deferred compensation plan. What should I consider when thinking about whether or not to participate? I'm doing all the things you recommend. I max out my 401k, I contribute to an IRA, I keep about 12 months in emergency savings. I'm sending you a picture of my girl. It was an adorable, looks like a schnauzer called Maggie. I'm probably biased, but you have to admit she's super cute. She is. Hope you both are able to get some rest over the holidays. Thanks for all that you do, Lara." Well, I mean, I mean, if you're doing all of those things, it's interesting. A non-qualified plan has certain rules associated with it. I wonder if maybe this is something that you could do a little bit of, but maybe not go crazy. I'd love to know a few more details, Lara. For example, how much money do you make? How much money have you already saved in the 401k? How much money's in the IRA? And how old are you? And what are kind of your goals? Because obviously, not knowing those aspects of your life makes it a bit more difficult to give you the advice about a non qualified plan. They can be really good. It's a great way to like sort of shove extra money away. It's just a question. I don't know whether or not it's the best thing for you. So, not sure. Okay. Is that fair enough to say not sure? All right, good. Next up is Melissa, who says, "I recently discovered your podcast and it's right up my alley." Mark, this is so good. I love the recently discovering the podcast, right? Okay. So she writes, "Consumable short segments, perfect for my attention span. I am a 51-year-old woman in a long-term relationship. Finances are kept separate. No debt. I do not own a home. I live in LA and it's not affordable to live in LA proper, and I'm just not interested in living in the suburbs. My question is, should I be beefing up my liquid savings and putting less into retirement? Last year, I changed jobs, and in order to find professional happiness and stability, I took a 15% pay cut. Okay, seems okay. I'm currently contributing 15% of my income to the employer-sponsored 401k, $100 a month into my Roth, which I just opened this October. Here's what Melissa has: 650 grand in a rollover IRA, 11,000 in the current 401k, 6,000 in a Roth, 41,000 in savings. Should I be putting more into the liquid savings by contributing less to the 401k and the Roth? 51. I need to know a little bit more information. This is so interesting because this is like kind of like the last one, in that I need to know how much you make, and I need to know how much you and your partner are looking at in terms of your funding your retirement. Are you going 50-50? Are you on the hook for it? I need more information. Also, you didn't mention when you think you might want to retire. In general, I love the idea of having some more Roth money and some liquidity. You're 51, but if you're planning on working another 15 years, you'll get there. That seems like that's a good plan. But I do need a little bit more information just to make sure you're on the right track. For most of you guys, without that, the idea of knowing what's going on, sort of your long term, it's tough for me to weigh in there without some of your goals and aspirations. Okay, so don't forget to include that when you send us an email. Okay, Jesse says, "I'm interested to know if there are financial advisors that I can hire on a temporary basis. I'm not looking for someone to oversee an entire portfolio, but I would like someone I could reach out to maybe twice a year or so to get advice. We've done the full portfolio approach before, but didn't find much value in it. I was told there is something called a wealth advisor. Would that be something more suited to what I'm looking for? Appreciate your advice. Thank you, Jesse. You can do this. This would be essentially a fee-based advisor, maybe an hourly advisor that you'd want to check out. And there are some firms that are setting these systems up so that you're, 2 or 4 times a year, that's all you do. So it's not necessarily the wealth advisor, but it would be someone who you could engage on a almost like a project basis. I'd be interested to know more about what's going on in your life, whether you really need this person. That would be probably the first place to start. Maybe you just want another set of eyes. That's possible, but maybe you're in great shape and you don't need that. So send us more information. And I think the model of having someone in your life, but not all the time, is really interesting. And maybe a hybrid advisor, one of the robo blended approaches, might be worth it for you. So that could be something else to think about. But we need a little bit more info, and you can tell us more about that when you follow up, because I know you will. All right, you're listening to Jill on Money. We're almost at the end of the show. I'm so sad. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Policy Genius virtual studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. All you have to do is go to policygenius.com. You get more info all about it. Mark, I can't believe we haven't gotten any Bitcoin questions. What's up with that? Where's all of our Bitcoin people who were asking us questions 5 years ago before the thing blew up and then crashed and then now back again? We're going to think about getting a Bitcoin person, an expert on the air with us. That'd be fun. Send us your Bitcoin questions, among others. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And here is a note from Tatiana, who says, thanks for sharing all of your knowledge with us. Quick question. I'm using a last will and testament template that I found online because I can't afford an attorney to do it. Should I remove the paragraphs that don't apply to my case, like, for example, the trust section or minor children, etc., or should I leave it there and just fill in the spaces where names and state go with NA? This is tough. Tatiana, instead of a template, could you maybe check out some of the online resources that take you through step by step? In fact, the sponsor of this hour, Policy Genius, now has an estate section. I think that I'd feel more comfortable with that because this is a legal document. I don't know what the right answer is to that. So I would encourage you to check it out at policygenius.com. We actually had the CEO of the company on the program to talk more about that. But, this is why it can be dangerous to do these things on your own. And I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. We don't know what you're supposed to be doing. So anyway, good luck with that. Check it out. All right. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a fantastic show. All your questions should just send them off to us. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Go to the website, jillonmoney.com. We just have to acknowledge that this is such a scary time, this period now before we get to the vaccine as the weather changes. Please do not forget, it is imperative that you wash your hands, you wear your masks, you maintain your physical distancing, and do not forget to do something nice for someone else today. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer, and we will talk to you next week.